What is the mission of the U.S. Department of Energy's Artificial Intelligence and Technology Office? How is it working to transform the Department of Energy into a world-leading AI enterprise? I'll explore these questions and so much more with our very special guest, Pamela Isom, Director of the Artificial Intelligence and Technology Office within the U.S. Department of Energy. But before we delve into specific initiatives, would you give us an overview of the history and mission of the Artificial Intelligence and Technology Office within the U.S. Department of Energy?
I sure can. The AI and Tech Office was established in September of 2019. Some people call it AIDO. I call it AI and Tech. I became the director in August of 2021, providing a new leadership and focus, but building on the successes and lessons learned of the prior leadership. We know that AI is pervasive in everything, in science and engineering. This includes how to address climate change, carbon capture, et cetera. So the vision of the AI TO office is to transform the Department of Energy into a world-leading AI enterprise by accelerating the research, the development, deployment, demonstration, and adoption of responsible and trustworthy AI. Now, that vision is similar to what was there before, except for I really emphasize demonstration and responsible and trustworthy artificial intelligence. So now our mission is to accelerate AI-enabled capabilities through strategic portfolio alignment while scaling department-wide use cases that advance the agency's core missions. In addition, we advocate for the program offices. So the department can come to us, the program offices can for a bit of advocacy for some things that they are pursuing. We provide advice on trustworthy AI and ML strategies, and we expand public, private, and international partnerships, policy, and innovations, all in support of national AI leadership and innovation. So we're very focused on our mission is to enable the department to advance AI capabilities where it makes sense. And we have really shifted the focus under my leadership to focus on impacts, not so much inventory, because we know that's a given, it's a fundamental, but what kind of impacts are we making and help the department make impacts?
So Pamela, great context. So how is your office organized?
That's a good question. The office is organized into 3 pillars: leadership and administration, AI portfolio and program optimization, and then AI strategy and partnership development. I can elaborate on those a little bit here. So led by a senior program manager, the portfolio and program optimization team, they conduct strategic portfolio analysis and alignment of the AI investments. So they're going to look at the investments and see what we're doing. They are on the lookout for capabilities that ensure departmental and national security priorities are met, and they will bring gap analysis to the forefront for addressing. This team facilitates department-wide trustworthy and responsible AI practices through workshops. They guide ethical AI practices, and they also focus on delivery of toolkits to help to enable and mitigate risks. Now, this team recently stood up the Responsible and Trustworthy AI Task Force. And then the second one, the Strategy and Partnership Development Team, that's also led by a senior program manager, and they build and ensure robust partnerships and customer excellence across internal, external, and international boundaries. And they're the ones that address the strategic communications for the office on AI. This includes the development of the DOE-wide AI strategy. They provide and lead innovative governance through operationalization and administration of the AI Advancement Council. And then leadership and administration, which is what I mentioned at first, kind of speaks for itself. We make sure that it is consistently applied because our focus is on understanding the impacts that we are making and how we can make an even greater impact and maximize the return on the AI investments. And then the leadership is also here to ensure workforce optimization and performance management.
So, Pamela, what are your specific duties and responsibilities as the director of the AI and Technology Office within Energy?
So that's a good question. So I am responsible for ensuring that we are delivering cross-cutting innovation and impacts through AI. That's really my responsibility. Also, I have a passion for equity. And so responsible and trustworthy AI is at the center of my personal attention. If we are going to lead AI at a global scale, which is our mission, then humanitarian focus and impacts are a must. So I'm there to help make sure that we're looking for societal impacts, that we are verifying and validating and looking to apply the good of AI. So we can research and apply AI for goodness and positive societal impacts. We must be mindful, however, of the adversarial outcomes and do what we can to not become a part of the problem. So you'll find me operating throughout the department, working with the national labs and doing all that I can to facilitate success for the team as well as the department. And then lastly, I like creative problem solving and removing roadblocks. So that's where you'll find me, somewhere trying to solve a problem and remove roadblocks out of my team's way.
So, Pamela, would you tell us more about your strategic priorities and how those priorities align with the National AI Initiative Office?
That's a good question. So we have some priorities. Responsible and trustworthy AI is at the top. Development of the departmental AI strategy, that's another one. And that also includes establishment of the AI Council, which we have made it past that hurdle, and we should be announcing it soon, but not quite. But we're close. So it's the AI Advancement Council. And then strategic partnership frameworks. I think it's always important to continue the strategic partnership development. And to do so, we need a good framework in place. So that's our goal. We did start that work in 2021 when I joined in August. And so we're going to continue to evolve that strategic partnership framework because life evolves, right? So we should evolve along with it. And then a high priority, all of these are high priorities, but a high priority is workforce education, training, and upskilling. We must do that. We must do more of that. And each of these goals pretty much align with the National AI Initiative Office and their strategy. And in fact, I'm involved now with updating the strategy, the national strategy. And so some of these are overlapping.
Would you elaborate on the AI life cycle for us?
Sure. So if I were to, at the highest level, the AI life cycle, it starts with the supply chain, where you want to understand the hardware, the software, the components of the AI. And then there is the data. And so there's the data, the models don't perform without data. And then there is the models themselves. And once you combine the data and the algorithms, that's when you really have the models. And then the next part of the life cycle is the deployment. So you want to deploy the models so that they are going to the right destinations in a secured manner. And then the last aspect, but it's not the end of the circle, it's a circle. It's not the end of the circle, but we want to monitor the model outputs. And I sometimes call that performance monitoring. So the life cycle at the highest level is five chevrons. And then, but the chevrons are circular because there's no beginning and end. We believe that the AI should be monitored after it's deployed. It should be monitored, and then we should continue to measure its performance relative to what we intended the AI to do.
Throughout this conversation, Pamela, you've mentioned trustworthy AI. So I'd like to transition to that topic and focus a little bit more on it. What is ethical AI? Why is it so important? And how does it contribute to the pursuit of trustworthy AI?
So if you think of ethical AI, just think about ethics in general. So we look, at least I look at ethical AI as kind of the conscience of AI and the component of AI that's making sure that we are considering the human elements of the behavior that we're expecting. So as an example, we say do no harm, where we want to make sure that we have human oversight and engagement. We want to make sure that communities are represented in the decision making. And I'll tell you why. When communities are left out, and this is where it gets difficult because you have to figure out how to make sure that the proper representation is included in the data sets and in the inputs to the AI models, which is the data, but it could be other things as well. You want to be sure that the information is diverse. And to do so, we need a diverse set of individuals who are either validating the outcomes of the AI or they are involved up front, or what we call human in the loop. But the reason why this is important is there are often times that decisions that are made, they are good decisions, they are great decisions, but they may have excluded some key communities or key sets of information, not intentionally, but because we just didn't know, because we're used to what we're used to. That introduces what we call biases. So if you want to prevent that, you have to have a diverse set of folks that can see information from the different perspectives. And we can take, for example, the high impact decisions around banking or energy distribution or the justice system. So I have a situation that I think is pretty popular and well known, and that is where credit reports and credit scores are generated as a result of AI. And financial institutions are increasingly using algorithms that impact the financial decisions, and that includes the risk rating, the credit scores, and even whether one is eligible to receive a loan. So if certain communities aren't, for instance, taken into consideration in the data, then those communities may be ineligible for loans because what their needs are may not have been considered, not intentionally, just because one didn't think to consider that. That's how it happens. So sometimes bias is deliberate. Sometimes bias is not. Sometimes it's that you just didn't know to consider certain situations. And so we look at how do we make sure that we are infusing diverse sets of information, that we are considering the moral conscience. And I'm going to give you one more example of what I mean by the moral conscience. I remember that there was a big focus, and there still is, on, I think they call it clickbait, but you're just trying to get folks to see what you put out there, and the more clicks, the better. So that means you're going to put anything in the information that will attract others to it. But the social conscience and the moral conscience says, maybe let's not do that, because maybe the reader or the reviewer of this information, maybe it's having adverse impacts on them. Maybe it's contributing or could contribute to frustration or depression, right? And so one doesn't think about that. When you're thinking about science and thinking about delivering solutions, you're not really thinking about the social implications. So when we talk about ethical AI, we're talking about considering those aspects as well, which means we have to monitor the outputs and look at how the AI is impacting society.
This has been the Business of Government Hour, a conversation with Pamela Isom, Director of the Artificial Intelligence and Technology Office within the U.S. Department of Energy. Be sure to join us next week for another informative, insightful, and in-depth conversation on improving government leadership and its effectiveness. Until then, subscribe, download, and listen to the entire interview at Podcast One, iTunes, or on your favorite podcast app. And as always, at businessofgovernment.org.